Hi, Algebra 1. We're going to talk about 10-2, simplifying radicals. I started without you. I did the easy ones. 24 breaks down into 4 times 6. Square root of 4 I can do. That comes outside. The 6 can't do anything with that. Square root of 16 is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Square root of 25 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. I like to have my list of perfect squares handy in case I need it. All right, so what do I do with a product of square roots? Well, I'm going to go ahead and multiply them. That gives me the square root of 140. Now, I know 4 goes into that because it ends in 40. So that's going to equal the square root of 4 times square root of 35. Okay, square root of 4 I can do. None of those numbers goes into 35 except for 1, so it's done. So my final answer is 2 times the square root of 35. Square root of 3 times the square root of 18 is going to give me the square root of 54. Well, 54 is the square root of 9 times the square root of 6. I can do the square root of 9. My final answer here is 3 times the square root of 6. Now, what do I do when they have coefficients? Well, you got to simplify. 3 times 4 is 12. Square root of 10 times the square root of 10. Square cancels the square root. 12 times 10 is 120. Okay? All right. Square root of 60, x to the 4th I can do. 60 would break down into 4 times 15. Y to the 7th is going to be y to the 6th times y. So I can do the square root of 4. Y to the 6th, 15y is going to be left in the rec. Okay, square root of 4 is 2. Square root of x to the 4th is x squared. X to the 6th, or y to the 6th, is going to give me a y third. And on the inside, I'm going to have 15y. Now, because there's a y here, I do not need absolute value bars. 88 is 4 times 22. Nothing on my list goes into 22. M to the 3rd, I have to break down. P squared I can do, so it's m squared times m. Got to break that down. R to the 4th times r. I can do that, I can do that, I can do that. Okay, so I've got 2 m p r squared. What goes inside? 22 m r. Now, I don't need an absolute value for the m because there's one inside. I do need one for the p. Okay? And that's my final answer. All right. 99 is going to be 9 times 11. I can do that. Can't do anything with the a. B to the 5th is b to the 4th times b. I can do c squared. Okay. So that's going to give me 3 b squared c times the square root of 11 a b. Okay. Now the c has no c inside, so it needs an absolute value. All right, 45/10 is not in simplest form. I can divide them both by 5, and that gives me 9 over 2. Before I do any simplifying, I want to get my equivalent fraction with a perfect square in the denominator. And that's going to be 9 times 2 over 4. 2 times 2, 2 squared. I can do this. I can do this. So that's going to give me 3 times the square root of 2 over 2. Okay? Which one was multiple choice? That was the one that was multiple choice. That's choice D. All right, number 11, this is where we needed conjugates, because how else am I going to get rid of that square root? I can't square it because that would give me a square root in the middle. That would just make my problem look worse. So I want a conjugate. The conjugate is the same with an opposite sign. That means I'm going to do a difference of squares. And a difference of squares will be the square of this minus the square of this, and no radicals. Whatever I do to the bottom, I got to do that to the top, because that's really equal to 1. Okay, so this is going to give me 3 squared minus the square root of 5 squared. Square cancels the square root. 9 minus 5. My denominator and my answer is 4. And then I distribute. Oh, I gotta sneeze. All right, 3 times 3 is 9 minus 3 times the square root of 5. And that one's done. Not too bad. Those really aren't the hard ones. Okay, got to do conjugates again. 2 minus the square root of 6, so I'm going to have 2 plus the square root of 6. Okay, that's going to give me 2 squared minus the square root of 6 squared. That's 4 minus 6, so my denominator is negative 2, and then I distribute. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 5 times the square root of 6. All right. Conjugate, I'm going to have the same thing, except it's going to have a plus instead of a minus. 1 plus the square root of 10. Got to do the same thing to the top. That gives me 1 squared minus the square root of 10 squared, which is 1 minus 10, which is negative 9. So my denominator is going to be a negative 9, and then I just distribute on top. 2 plus 2 times the square root of 10. I can't do anything with square root of 10. Okay? All right, let's look at number 14. Ooh. Square root of 12 is not in simplest form. Do I want to do with that now or later? Let's deal with it later. Okay. Conjugate's going to have a minus. Whatever you do to the bottom, you got to do the same thing to the top. Okay, so that's going to give me 4 squared minus the square root of 12 squared. 16 minus 12 gives me a denominator of 4. Okay, distribute, well, 1 times anything is going to stay the same. Okay, so I've got to simplify this square root of 12 because that's 4 times 3. So that's going to be 2 times the square root of 3. All my numbers are even. I can pull out a GCF of 2. Okay? And since I'm going to divide it out in the top and the bottom, it's just going to be gone. That leaves me with 2 minus the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, so see, this was 2 times 2 minus the square root of 3, divided 2 out of the top and the bottom, and I get simplest form. Okay? All right. The conjugate for 6 minus the square root of 7 is 6 plus the square root of 7. And if I do that on the bottom, I got to do that on the top. Okay? Gives me a difference of squares. 6 squared minus the square root of 7 squared. 36 minus 7 is 29. And then I distribute on the top. 4 times 6 is 24, plus 4 times the square root of 7. Okay? These are actually kind of fun. All right, conjugate. It's got to have a minus. 5 minus the square root of 11. And whatever you do on the bottom, you got to do the same thing on the top. Okay, so that gives me 5 squared minus the square root of 11 squared. 25 minus 11 is 14. Ooh, 14. Ooh, even number. Even number. Let's simplify. Before we distribute, okay, 3/7. Then I can distribute my 3, which gives me 15 minus 3 times the square root of 11, all over 7. So I divided it out, that 2, because it needs to be in simplest form. Hope that helps you. Bye.